Guys, we have got some work to do on the GR Corolla today. For those of you that don't know, this is not a brand new car. I couldn't find a new one that wasn't ridiculously priced for the longest time, and I refused to pay a markup on a Corolla, but this one popped up, so we went and picked it up. It does already have some modifications done to it. As you can see, it's got a front lip, wheel spacers, lowering springs, it's got a spoiler on the back, pitch stop mount, and tint that is entirely too dark. So the goal for today is to return everything back to stock with the intention of getting a better feel for how the car came from the factory. So when I do go to make modifications, I have sort of a baseline to go off of and a reason as to why I'm making modifications that I am, instead of just modifying the car for the sake of it. Just a heads up, this isn't gonna be any sort of guide or anything like that, even though I'm swapping out the springs and the pitch stop mount. I will have in-depth install guides on those things later on when I go to install the aftermarket parts, but for now, we're just gonna quickly try and get this thing as close to stock as possible. We're gonna start with the easiest thing, which should be the lip kit. Right now on the car, we've got the Flow Design lip kit. I believe they are out of Australia. They do make some of the strongest lips out there, super durable. I don't know exactly what these are made out of, but they're essentially indestructible. So if you are looking for something that you can beat up on, this will be a good option for you. It's really simplistic. I also just realized I probably don't have, or I definitely don't have the OEM clips that these bolts replaced. We'll figure that later on. We'll figure that out later on though. Shouldn't be a big deal. So we're gonna just zap these off and then we'll move on to the next thing. All right, we're gonna move on to the side skirts next. I don't know if there's nuts on top of this. Hopefully I can just zap these off and pull it off. Okay, I think we're okay. Oh, that's dirty. There's one that is right on top of this arm, unfortunately. I might be able to get in there with an Allen key, we'll see. I'll just take that one off once we get the car on the ground. It's the last one that's holding it on. So front lip is off, side skirts are essentially off, just one bolt holding each on. We're gonna jump to the rear spats and the diffuser next. The only thing that bothers me about this kit is the rear diffuser and how it has these strakes that stick out. Everything else, the front lip and the side skirts, look pretty good if you're looking for something simplistic. I'm not a big fan of this style of rear diffuser is all. Rear spats are okay too, I guess. No, these have nuts on top of them. All right, I'm gonna have to undo this so I can get a wrench up there. Damn it. There we go. Taking out these plastic clips with sand, dirt, and grit in them is quite possibly the worst thing about working on used cars. It's either that or rust, at least here in the Midwest. This thing is filthy. Another thing I don't like about this diffuser, specifically those strakes, is that it rubs against the bumper and eventually it's gonna wear through the paint. Luckily it doesn't look like it's too bad on here, but it's annoying. A little bit worse on this side. unfortunately. Hopefully we can buff everything out. Oh well, it's just gonna be a track car anyway. So for these plastic retaining clips, pop clips, whatever you wanna call them, I'm gonna try and wash these real quick just to try and get as much of the dirt and sand out of here before I reinstall it. So hopefully next time we have to take these out, they're a little bit easier to take out. Looks like it's just rib nuts. All right. We're gonna jump to the pitch stop mount next. So we need to take this under tray off. I also need to change the oil in this because I don't know when the last time that is done. So this is gonna need to come off anyway. Here we go again with these pop clips. Having these pop clip pliers is a lifesaver though. All right, now we have access to the pitch stop mount. This car does have an aftermarket pitch stop mount currently installed, which I believe has an 88 durometer bushing, which is quite stiff. So there's a lot of NVH added to the cabin, which is noise, vibration, and harshness. At low RPMs, you can really feel those vibrations. So we're gonna be swapping back in the OEM mount. Now, a lot of people take a look at their OEM mounts and they see these tears in the bushing material, and it's actually separated from the metal in this portion here. And they think that this is a failed mount. That's actually not the case. As long as the bushing material is still attached in this area here, it's going to perform like it's supposed to. So we're gonna uninstall this one, reinstall this one back in, see how it feels, and then probably later on down the road, we'll install one that's a little bit stiffer. Likely not quite as stiff as this one, but just a tad bit more so that we get rid of some of that slop. All right, that was easy enough. We've got the engine side of the OEM mount removed from the aftermarket pitch stop mount, so we're going to reconnect this onto the OEM pitch stop mount, and then we can go back over to the car and get it reinstalled. That's in there. All right, I just need to tighten these down, get them torqued down. Oh, and then we should be good. I'm gonna whip out the big torque stick for this. I didn't realize how tight these needed to be. Okay, there's that one. Jesus. Okay, we are finished with the pitch stop mount. That was super easy. I am gonna leave the under tray off because we still need to do an oil change, which I'll do later on. But let's go ahead and get the wheels off. We need to remove the wheel spacers and our suspension. One thing that I just noticed as I was gonna go remove these wheels is that all four of these tires are different. I'm gonna guess that the previous owner of this car hooned the shit out of this car and just threw on some tires that he had laying around. This tire also has a big gash on the side of it, so I definitely want to get these replaced sooner rather than later. The tread depth also does not look like it matches. Yeah, that sucks, but we're gonna get those replaced. Also looks like there is a bit of uneven wear over there, so need to get this thing aligned once we get the suspension back to stock. Oof. Let's hope these come off. Hey, look at that. I don't even know what size these are. I feel like it's probably a 20. Yeah, I'd say that's probably a 20. Now that we have the wheels and the spacers off, we're gonna move to the suspension. Now on this car, for the front, to access the top hats for the struts, we have to remove this cowl here, which also means you have to take off the wiper arms, which I've already done, and then there's just some clips that are holding this in place that I've already removed, so we can just pull this off. Now, if we were installing, say, coilovers, I believe you also need to remove this sheet of black metal, this sub-assembly, because it covers the area where you would make camber adjustments or adjust the damping. But since we are just removing the stock struts and then replacing the springs, I think we can get away with just leaving this where it's at, because I think we have access to all of the nuts. Oh yeah, I think we have access to everything we need without having to take this off for now. But when we do go to install, say, a set of coilovers, we might need to modify this a bit so that we're able to access the adjustments. We'll get to that when we get to it. But for now, I think we're okay. The wiper motors are kind of in the way of the nut that's back here, so I'm gonna just remove it to give ourselves a little bit more room. I think it's just these two bolts, so nothing too difficult. Come on. There we go. Okay, unplug it. Try not to smash the window. All right. I've got all but one of the top hat nuts removed. I left one on there loosely just so the assembly doesn't drop down. Now I just need to remove the two large bolts holding the strut to the knuckle. Everything else was removed, the brake line, end link, and the ABS line. So once we do that, we'll lower the car back down, and then I should be able to just grab onto the strut, remove that last nut up top, and pull it out. Okay, I've got the jack here underneath the assembly just to hold it up. If you don't do this and you take the strut out, the hub assembly is just gonna hang down, and you could possibly pull the CV joint out, which is kind of a pain to line up and push back in. So that's there just to make things a little bit easier. Got the last bolt on here that I'm gonna pull out. Okay, so both the bolts are out. The last thing that is holding the strut in place is that nut that I left on top. There we go. Since this is my first time doing the suspension on these, I don't know how much pressure these springs are under, so we're gonna use the spring compressors just to be safe. It likely isn't that much, but like I said, we're gonna do it just to be safe and not have this explode in my face, hopefully. There we go. So yeah, wasn't under that much pressure, but it doesn't hurt to use them. We'll likely need to use them on the OEM springs because those are gonna be a little bit taller. I've got the spring compressors transferred over to the OEM spring, so we're gonna get this in place, make sure it's lined up at the bottom, and then reinstall the dust boot. Make sure that's aligned correct. I think that's how it's supposed to go. Washer's on there. I think I compress it enough to where I shouldn't have to struggle too much trying to push down on the spring. We'll see if that's correct or not. Okay, we're good. Got the nut threaded back on there. I'm gonna zap it with the impact. And then just need to get the spring compressors off and we can get this back on the car. Let's see if I can do this by myself. All right, we got it. Now that we've got the strut back in place, I just need to reinstall all of the bolts, get the end link and the lines back on, torque everything down, and then we can move to the rear. I guess these bolts need 199 foot-pounds, so let's see what I can do. That's loosening, Kevin. Oh God. Oh God, this is stupid. Okay. Here's one. All right, other side. All right. The rear should be quite a bit easier because it's a divorce spring and shock setup here. I don't have to remove the whole strut assembly and disassemble it to replace the spring. I just have to unbolt this control arm, and that allows us to take the spring off and replace it with the OEM one, and then we reinstall the control arm. Simple as that, I think. Perfect. So just pull this down, and look at that, super easy. All right, so we'll just transfer this over to the stock spring, and then set this in here. Bring our jack stand back over. This was so much easier. All right, one side done. Okay, perfect. Let's get these torqued down, get the wheels back on, and then we just have to take the spoiler off. I almost forgot, before we actually lower this car down and start working on this spoiler, I need to change the oil because I have no idea when the last time that has been done. So I went to the dealership, got filter and oil, and now we can make sure that there is fresh oil in this thing. We've got the plug back in, changed out the gasket. The old gasket was stuck onto the oil pan, so make sure that you get that removed before you install the new one. We're gonna torque this down and then change out the filter. all wiped off, and then install the new one. I've got everything buttoned up underneath the car, so now we can fill it back up with some fresh oil. I'm just using some OEM Toyota oil. I believe it takes 4.5 quarts, but I'll double check with the dipstick. Let's check where we're at here. We are right at that full mark, so it looks like we are good. Let's get these wheels back on. It's gonna be funny that we went from kind of flush fitment and lowered to now it's gonna be monster trucking and then tucked into the wheel well. Oh well, we'll change it back later and probably change the wheel setup as well. I don't know what wheels I want to toss on this thing yet, so if you guys have any suggestions, let me know. Now I know I did mention that all of these tires are different. That is going to be the main priority before we start driving this thing around, is to get new tires so they all match and I don't have to worry about the different tread depths. We also need to change these brake pads because there's way too much brake dust going on. The last thing we need to do is to pull this spoiler off of the car. I honestly have no idea what this is, but it does actually look good on the car. We just want a blank slate to work with. I believe it is just double-sided taped on here, so I heated it up with a heat gun and we should be able to pull this thing off now. It's likely gonna be pretty nasty underneath, but we'll get that cleaned up once we get this off. All right, look at that. Oh, the backing wasn't even pulled off this piece. Yeah, like I said, pretty nasty under here. Not sure how long this was on the car, but a lot of dirt and grime here that we need to clean up. But now, we essentially have a stock GR Corolla. Everything on the car is basically back to stock besides the tint. I'm gonna have to have somebody else remove the tint for me. But I gotta be honest, this car doesn't look bad in stock form. The ride height isn't atrocious. The wheel fitment isn't as terrible as I thought it was gonna be. The stock wheel fitment on the GR86 was way worse. So I can work with this for a little bit. We can drive this around, get a feel for how the car is stock, and then we can start making modifications. If you guys have any suggestions on what we should do first to the car, please let me know in the comment section down below. And if you wanna follow along, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But that is gonna do it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.